And everyone,
Good afternoon.
today we're just so very happy to welcome you to our final debate in a series of 10 debates. And my young daughter, she's everybody's daughter, she's going to be assisting as the MC. She's been doing so for quite some time. And her grandmother here is so proud of her, as we all are. Don't have a microphone, so we're going to have to speak loudly. I'm from the country, so my voice carries, you know. You know the general structure of the debates. Each debater has 20 minutes. And then, following the 20 minutes, they have a 10-minute, rebuttal or whatever. And then we have a master poet with us, Brother D. We always fold him in for poetry. And then you have an opportunity to ask your questions and to make your comments. So I'm very happy to say that on this day, this very beautiful day, we certainly welcome all of you. You're in for not only a treat, you're in for a very important information.
Oh, okay, so first we're going to start with libation. No? Well, the topic today is should young people join the police force? And so it's very important. It's a very important debate because I'm a young person and I'm not interested in joining the police force. But it's a very important debate because I do have friends who are interested in that. So we have Brother Noel Leiter and Brother Michael Graves who are going to speak to us today.
Okay, and so now we're going to have our young sister to pour libation.
It's Michael Leiter and James McIntosh.
Oh, you're not doing
No
it?
leader.
Ooh.
I'm doing it.
Ooh, and Dr. James McIntosh. Yes.
There's been a change because Viola Plummer is
Yeah.
ill. She has a cold. So Dr. McIntosh will be taking the nay. People have been asking me, yay or nay. So he's the nay.
Right.
And Noel is the yay.
I'm with you, Nate.
Okay. You with the yay and the nays? Okay, here we go.
So first, before I begin, I would like to ask my elder for permission.
Yes, get permission.
We pour libation for Dr. John Henry Clarke, who is the father of this house.
Ashe.
We pour libation for Dr. Ben, who recently left us, who is also a great historian.
Ashe.
And now we pour libation for your ancestors, so you can call out the names of your ancestors.
Nelvine Smith, John
Randall Hamer.
Frederick
Ashe.
Douglass,
Ashe.
Nat Turner.
Ashe.
More? Ida B. Wells.
Ivan Ben Serma. Ashe.
Gil Noble.
Ashe.
Hamer.
Ashe. Elambe Bragg. Ashe.
Gil Noble.
Ashe.
Lambe Bragg.
Ashe. We pour libation for our ancestors who we don't know their names, but we feel their spirit.
Ashe.
And we also pour libation for the young people who have died due to police brutality and all the other things that happen in this community.
Ashe.
And finally, we pour libation for future generations.
Ashe.
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 And now, brothers and sisters, we're going to see, Dr. McIntosh is taking the nay side, and Brother Leiter is taking the yay side. So, we're going to leave it up to you. Those of you that want to hear the yay first, raise your hand.
Let's listen to you.
Start with the yes.
Okay, Brother Leiter, it is up to you. One of our finest activists on the new, let me see, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement moved here.
Correct.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I said my clock. First of all, my name is Noel Leiter. I'm one of the co-founders of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. I'm a former New York City police officer as well as a former New York City Police Department sergeant. Let me set my time clock. Hold on a second.
We'll let you know.
All right, like 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes. 5 minutes and even 1 minute.
Okay. As a police officer, we started 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care because we've experienced so much racism, so much racial discrimination within law enforcement, and we thought it was very, very important as Black police officers in order to address the racism that we not only observe, but we've experienced ourselves, that Black officers needed to be organized. We had other organizations involved in the New York City Police Department, but none of them were quite as active as we thought and as vocal that we thought they should be. So that's why we started 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. And we were very successful in addressing so many issues over the years. But we came here today to discuss, should Black youth become police officers? A very profound question that is primarily asked toward the African American community. White communities don't ask that for their kids. Latinos now, which one is the fastest growing members of the New York City Police Department, don't ask that of their kids. Asians, which is the second fastest group that's joining the New York City Police Department, don't ask that of their children because of the relationship that they have with the police department. African American community is uniquely separate from all other communities because of the historic hostility that police departments hold against members of our community, and for a whole host of reasons. So it's a very important question. Nowhere in the world am I refuting the reason behind the question, because it's a very good question. Should Black youth become police officers? Now, this question has been a little bit harder to defend as of late because of some of the outrageous acts of police brutality and murder that has been harped upon members of our community. So I'm not as in a good position as I might have been maybe a month ago or 2 months ago because of some of the outrageous incidents that have been captured on film that only caused more division between the African American community and police departments all across the country. Justifiably so. Because some of these acts of brutality and outright murder is inexplicable. Right. But yet police officers are routinely excused of this hostility and this murder against members of our community. We have Eric Garner, right here in New York City, who was murdered on film, and the officer was excused. We have Michael Brown, who many witnesses observed murdered by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. We have John Crawford in B. Creek, Ohio, and 12-year-old Tamar Rice in Cleveland, who was killed by a police officer on film. So it becomes much harder to defend encouraging Black youth to become police officers or to join police forces around the country, because police forces are viewed by many in the African American community as a hostile occupying force, as overtly disrespectful, as soldiers invading our community. And to a great extent that is true, and that is why we started our organization, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. Add to the murders, add to the physical abuse and the disrespect, the unnecessary contact that police officers routinely commit in our community with stop, question, and frisk, which result a lot of times in false arrests. It becomes harder to defend the question, should Black youth become police officers? But it is a defensible position, because I don't think any of us will argue that police officers are going to be in our community.
That's right.
I don't think that's even a debatable proposition. We are going to have police officers. So if we do have police officers, shouldn't they be our sons and daughters? Shouldn't they look like us? Shouldn't they have our concerns at heart? So when I answer this question in the affirmative, should Black youth become police officers, and I say, yes, they should, I like to add a little qualifying notation to my response. I would like to say Black youth who are Afrocentric, conscious, and have concerns of our community at heart should become police officers. Not only Black youth, any Black youth, because we have so many Black adults who at one time were Black youth who are now on the police department and hold some of the same notions that our white officers have. So we're not talking about those folk becoming police officers. We're talking about black youth who are Afrocentric, who have a consciousness of Afrocentricity and have a commitment to protect and serve our community. We say they should be police officers. Now, that is what we should want our police officers to consist of. Individuals from our community, our sons and daughters, that reflect our aspirations, that will protect us and serve us in the manner by which police departments are supposed to serve community. That is what we want. Not having African Americans on the police department is calling for an apartheid system, which is unacceptable. I cannot imagine being a former police officer, intervening in many instances to stop our community from being abused, from knowing my mere presence stop officers from doing certain things they would do if I wasn't there. My mere presence, and I'm kind of tall, and I'm kind of outspoken, stop our community on many instances from being abused and disrespected and perhaps even killed. Right. Knowing that, I cannot imagine New York City Police Department or any police department in this nation absent of African Americans or representatives from the African American community. That is a notion I wouldn't even want to ponder as a plausibility. It's totally unacceptable. When you look at Ferguson, Missouri, and we find that only 3 African American officers, or 2 out of 50 some odd police officers, was African American, that's outrageous for a community that's majority African American. Right. To have that dynamic. So even Amos Wilson, and I'm going to put on my glasses for this particular quote, one of the wisest men our community ever produced, along with Professor Clarke and Dr. Ben, he stated, law enforcement should reflect the ethnic composition of the African American communities they serve and should employ at all levels a representative number of African American personnel who possess a high level, as I stated, Afrocentric consciousness and demeanor. All levels of the police department should be reflective of the community that they serve. All studies have shown when police departments reflect the community that they serve, they have a better relationship. They have a better understanding of each other. There's more mutual respect. So even our great lecturer, our great professor, Amos Wilson, stated that that should happen. And that's one of the reasons why our organizations were critical of Bill de Blasio when he appointed our present commissioner, what's his name?
Brett.
No good Brett, as a police commissioner, as opposed to Phil Banks, who was very qualified and was next in line to be the police commissioner. Because we understand as black law enforcement officers, it's important that all levels of the department be reflective of the community that they serve. And do you know this so-called liberal, this so-called progressive,
That's right. Thank you.
Bill de Blasio, has every agency, law enforcement agency in New York City is headed by a white person.
That's right.
Sheriff Department, Department of Probation, Department of Parole, Department of Correction, Department NYPD, all white. So this absence of African color, African opinion, and even though we are talented and just as proficient in fulfilling these positions, we're not there. And that's a problem. And this problem manifests itself every day on the streets of New York City. So Amos Wilson agrees with us, agrees with me, and said that law enforcement personnel should reflect the ethnic composition of the African American communities that they serve. And that is not what we have right now. So should black youth, and when I say should black youth, you can substitute the word that is Afrocentric and conscious, become police officers. Now, what is the definition of a police officer? What is the responsibility of the police officer? Because we already talked about black youth and we qualified that term. Police officers are law enforcement officers. They have very, very great power as they walk the street. They can take a life. They can arrest. They can issue a summons. They can stop. They can force their way into your house. Awesome responsibility of police officers. But what is the sanitized explanation or sanitized definition? Police officers work in partnership with the communities they serve to maintain law and order, protect members of the public and their property, prevent crime, reduce the fear of crime, and improve the quality of life for all citizens. Did you hear that definition? Is that what we experience?
No.
That's not what we experience.
No.
Okay, wait a minute, let me read it again. Police officers work in partnership with the communities they serve, that doesn't happen, and maintain law and order, protect members of the public and their property, prevent crime, reduce the fear of crime, and improve the quality of life for all citizens. You say that's not happening?
Absolutely.
I say you're all wrong. It is happening.
That's right.
It's happening in the white community.
That's right.
Why? Because there's white officers. And can you imagine if African Americans were in control of these agencies, if we have positions of power, that we can force this definition on communities of color. See, when we talk about blacks not being a part of police officer, when we criticize the police department, a lot of white folks, they play dumb. Perhaps some of them are dumb, but they don't have the same experiences from police officers that we have.
That's right.
So when we talk about police abuse and police brutality, police disrespect, they look at us like, oh, you just complaining. You'll always complain. You'll always have issues. Maybe your kids weren't so bad, you wouldn't have a problem with police. They don't experience this. So when we talk about the responsibility and the job of police officers, that's how police officers respond in white communities. The way they're supposed to respond. But when they report in our community, because of the lack and the inability of us to control a lot of these departments, to punish these officers, we have a different experience. And they do not meet this criteria when they walk the streets of Harlem or Bedford-Stuyvesant. So that's another reason why it's very important for us to have African Americans, black youth, become police officers. And I'm not naive. I understand to a great extent the role that police officers use, or police departments, or the law enforcement entity, the role that they play in oppressing the African American community with the criminal industrial complex. I'm not naive to the role or the historic origin of police departments as it relates to tracking down and capturing slaves. I'm not naive of none of that. But if we're to say for those reasons, and because of the present oppressive relationship between the police department and our community, that we shouldn't join for those reasons, then we can say that about any institution. White supremacy and the oppression of African people and the maintenance of the status quo exists in the Board of Education.
That's right.
Exists in entertainment, exists in the economy,
Right.
exists in labor, exists in law, exists in religion. It exists through every avenue in this particular country. Every walk of life is entrenched in this country. Every institution is entrenched with white supremacy. I don't think we would say that African Americans shouldn't join those other institutions because of racism and white supremacy. Our people are being exploited in every single agency that exists. White supremacy controls it, dominates, and our people do not benefit as a result of being involved in it. The educational system, as Amos Wilson said, makes our people dumb. The police, the law enforcement institution make our people criminal. You know, the welfare system make our people poor. Every institution controlled by the white supremacists do not serve our community. Political system, same thing. So we should be in all of these institutions, as the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said. Our people should be all over. We should be like a little bug in the stomach of America, always bothering her, until she treats our people equitably. So yes, and one of the things I've observed over the years, as it relates to this particular question, should black youth become police officers, is that those in the nationalist community, those who love African people, those who have a head and a heart knowledge of the experiences of African people, shy away from these law enforcement agencies. On the other hand, those white nationalists, those who have a hatred of African people and who salute white power, these are the people that gravitate towards law enforcement institutions.
That's right.
So we have that differences. Black nationalists say later for law enforcement, I'm not going to be in it, and white nationalists join it because they understand and they enjoy. And when I say they enjoy some of the ways that they treat our people, you would never get to appreciate it unless you sat up close and personal, the way they treat our people and the way they get a kick out of it. You know, and when some people talk about white police officers walking around our community and they don't fear the black community.
That's right.
They know they got a radio, they know they got 30,000 strong. When they walk around our community, they walk around like bullies. So when they react, it's not out of fear. When people say, well, the officer have a hard job, they weren't afraid. This is not how they walk. But I've always noticed that. I know some very conscious brothers who love black people, who love our community, who would defend our community without a gun and a shield. They stray away from law enforcement. No, I don't want to be a police officer. And I respect that, and I understand that. But I've always observed that white nationalists gravitate to these institutions.
Good point.
You know, so that's something that we have to fix. So, is there a need? One, now we know what police officers are supposed to do. Is there a need for police officers? Being real, criminality is a problem in our community. This is not a debate over the cause of criminality, but we do have a community infested with criminals. I know the overwhelming majority of our people aren't criminals, but you know, over the last weekend on the news, 6 shooters, 9 people shot just this weekend. We're not going to talk about a place like Chicago, while daughters and our grandmothers are being shot by individuals in our community. So is there a need for law enforcement? I think we would conclude yes. When you look at the homicide rate,
Here we are.
65 minutes? Wow, is that 15 or 5?
5 left.
Wait, let me make 15. Speak for themselves. You know, because of poverty and white racism and a whole other host of reasons, crime is a serious problem. You know, yeah, a woman can't walk in our communities sometimes, our young people, and so there's a need for law enforcement entities because we have yet to develop institutions whereby we are protecting our own communities. Now, there's one thing from a block association or but that's you need something more sophisticated than that. Developing a police force in our community would take a whole host of energy. Because first of all, if you want to respond to a crime, the people involved, sometimes say, "Who are you? Who gave you the authority?" So we need police officers because crime is definitely a serious issue in our community. Not too long ago, we had a challenge from Jet Magazine, Ebony Magazine. I don't know if you've seen it. And there was a call, "Where is black officers?" This was after the shooting in Ferguson, Missouri. There's a need for black officers to stand up. And we'd agree with that. I wrote a quick letter. I don't even know if I have time. I want to share the letter with you that we wrote. Real quick, the January issue of Ebony News and Views section contained an open letter calling on New York Police Department's Black and Latino fraternity organizations to speak up, take a stand, and not allow acts of sanctioned police abuse and killings to harm members of our respective communities. I wrote this only because we understand the concerns stated in your article and believe the challenge that you raised that Black and Latino officers are reasonable, that we and 100 blacks in law enforcement who care feel the necessity to respond. 100 blacks in law enforcement who care was founded in 1995 by a core group of concerned African Americans representing a variety of professions within the field of law enforcement. Our stated mission is to serve as a model organization for individuals and other professions in our communities so that we can again take our rightful place on the stage of history. Over the last 20 years, members of 100 blacks in law enforcement who care have a well-documented record of publicly speaking out against NYPD discrimination, abuse, racial profiling, criminality, excessive force, and even murder against members of the Black and Latino community. Our organization is well known for convening hundreds of press conferences and making numerous radio and television appearances. We have repudiated acts of police brutality and police criminality. Our organization has filed numerous complaints regarding these abuses and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a couple of things, but I know I'm running down on time. So our record is clear. And without all of this as African American police officers, if we weren't here, none of this would have happened. None of this would have happened. Some of you can ask Reverend Sharpton in January 12th. He may not be a fan of this group. On January 12th, in 1991, he was stabbed in the chest as he prepared to lead a protest march through the streets of Bensonhurst regarding the murder of Yusef Hawkins. I don't know if you remember that. When he was stabbed, there was hundreds of police officers around him. None of them did nothing. We were asked to provide security for Reverend Sharpton and the protesters. When we were there, nothing happened to anyone. Brother Shaheed James Muhammad and Patrice Patterson, who on July 6, 1995, were acquitted of assault police officers in the aftermath of the Men Youth March. Y'all remember Men Youth March? There was 2 brothers arrested for protecting our community because the police department assaulted the community. And they went on trial. We were asked by the Honorable Minister Khalid Muhammad to testify on those brothers' part as police officers, as black police officers. And I was on the job then. I wasn't retired. We told them we would testify against the department that we were working for because the department was wrong. We did testify, and our brother was acquitted. That wouldn't have happened unless black police officers stood up. One of the brothers was acquitted. Ask the mother of Louisa Staten, who on September 10, 2007 contacted 100 blacks in law enforcement who care because her son was assaulted by a mob of white boys at McDonald's, and even though it was on film, they arrested him and prosecuted him.
That's right. D.A. Right.
We came out there and we supported him. Make a long story short, charges was dropped as black police officers. Lastly, because I only have 30 seconds probably, ask John White, who protected his family in Riverhead.
That's right.
One of our members heard of that particular case, and we like to thank SEMA-TEC because y'all raised a lot of money for the brother. They came out and support.
That's
But
right.
one of our members, a black cop, ran out to Riverhead, and when we went in the courtroom, we seen nothing but skinheads. A courtroom packed full of skinheads. Our brother came back and said, brother, we got to go out there and protect this family because they were threatening him. And Michael Graves got on TV and said, leave this family alone. If you skinheads want to have problems with somebody, have problems with us. Make a long story short, he was convicted, unfortunately, of manslaughter and weapons possession. He had to go to jail. We pressured as black cops, and we provided his family bulletproof vests, some of our own bulletproof vests. We went there protecting with our weapons. We went to the governor. He was ultimately, his prison sentence was dropped. He went home. But we did it as black police officers. If there were no black police officers, none of this would have happened. And I had a few more cases, but I think my time has run out. So, in conclusion,
You have 10 minutes to rebuttal.
you're gonna come back. Okay, yeah. So, in conclusion, when asked the question, should black youth become police officers, we say, heck yes.
That was a very, very, very strong yay, you know? That was a yay. Okay. So, what did you think of that?
It was very interesting. I was thinking about a situation I had a few weeks ago. Abyssinian Baptist Church asked me to speak to a couple of cops on how the community, the black community, and black police officers, any type of police officer could just come together and have a strong community. And so I had to speak on behalf of how I felt in terms of police officers. So it kind of gave me a sense of, I don't know, it's just his presentation, right, kind of helped me out with how I was feeling in terms of speaking to these police officers, because I'm very bitter towards police officers, hence what they do to black youth. So that's basically my reaction.
That's a good reaction. Give her a hand, please. Okay, now we're going to have Dr. James McIntosh, who's going to come to us, and he is saying, no, we should not have our young people joining the police force. Now, as you know, brothers and sisters, when sides are defended, it doesn't mean that it is necessarily how you feel, but it's to give you information on both sides of an issue.
That's right.
Is that okay?
That's right.
Okay, Dr. James McIntosh.
Despite what Betty says, I believe that Brother Noel actually believes what he said. He asked a question in the middle of what he said, and I'm going to address that first. He said, well, actually, he made a statement. He said, we are going to have police in our community. You all agree with me with that, right? Yeah. See, that's a question. It was said as a statement, but it's actually a question. And so, in the course of what I say, maybe you'll have a different opinion of that by the time I get through. I want to say black youth do not join the New York City Police Department. The first thing you're going to have to do wrong is become an oath taker. You're not going to become an oath taker like a doctor who promises to do no harm. That oath reads, the last part of it, to faithfully discharge my duties as a police officer of the New York City Police Department to the best of my abilities, so help me God. So if your duties are to hassle black youth standing on the corner, that's what you're going to do. Because you pledged to the white man's God that you would do it to the best of your ability. If your duty is to stop children going into the subway to search their backpacks, that's what you're going to do. because you pledged to the white man's God that that's what you were going to do. If your duty is to arrest an 11-year-old, and I'm not taking conjecture or hypothetical things, I'm talking about things that police actually do, that is a part of their duty. To arrest an 11-year-old at a school who years ago when I was going to school would have just been sent to the principal's office, that's what you're going to do. Because you pledged to do that. And you not only pledged to do that, you pledged to the white man's God to do that. Part of your duties, you have to racially profile your own people.
Thank you.
Not necessarily because you want to, but you have to. Even if they put inordinate numbers of police in a particular community, you have to go where they tell you to go. You can have all the theories and all the goodness in your heart that you want, but you're not going to go into Bensonhurst when they're sending you into the Marcy projects. You're not going to go into Sutton Place when they're sending you to the Brevoort projects. You're going to go where they send you to go. And when they tell you to target black people, you're going to do it. No, I know a brother like Noel would never, if they said go target black people, he would never do it. But they're not going to say it that way. They're going to use code words. When they tell you to go and we have to arrest aggressive panhandlers, they know what that means. And in your heart of heart, you know what that means. But you feel conflicted, so you pretend that you don't. When they tell you we're going to target gang activity, we want to look at people that's wearing red, or we want to look at people that's wearing blue, you will do that. You know what it means. It means black people. In your heart of hearts, you know that's what it means, but you're not going to not do that because you pledged to do that, and you pledged to the white man's God. When they tell you to target these colors that they tell you mean gang activity, or to target behaviors which they tell you mean gang activity, or mean that the person has a gun, they give you what they call training. They train you that if somebody hitch up their pants like this, that means they might have a gun in their waistband. Now, am I lying? I'm not lying. This is a part of their training. This is what they did with the picture of Ramarley Graham. They show you Ramarley Graham walking down the street, minding his business, and then they say, see right there, when he hunched up his pants? See, that was left man, he had a gun. Followed the man to his house, knocked his door down, killed him in his own house. And that's the training they give. And if you, black youth, are a member of the NYPD, that's the training you're going to get, and that's the activity you're going to indulge in. If they tell you to target, we got to get terrorists this month, okay? You know what they mean. They mean black people. They're not talking about the KKK. When they say target terrorists, they don't mean the KKK, and they don't mean these extreme groups inside of the police force. They don't mean target the whites in the police. They don't mean target your partner when they say get terrorists. When they talk about that man punching that elderly woman down on the ground, you've seen that videotape, punching up repeatedly in her face. They don't mean for you to target him. They mean for you to target black people. They mean for you to target Black Panthers. They mean you to go to Moscow Takwa. They mean for you to target your own people. And if you join the police department, black youth, and you do your duties to the best of your ability, if you do your duties to the satisfaction of the white man's God, you're going to oppress black people. You will racially profile your own people. You can think in your mind all you want to that you're going to go in there and you're going to improve that department. You can't improve it. You're not talking about a beautiful, clear face with a little small pimple. You're talking about a face that's pustulous and leprous, and you're the one little clear spot. You're not going to change it. It's going to change you. You can't improve something that's fundamentally wrong. Brother Noel said there's going to be police in our community because he really, really, really believes that. He believes it's that way, and it's always been that way. It is not that way. It is a principle, it's an idea that was absolute anathema to people who came here to this country. It was never the idea of police being all around you, a military presence, people right in your community, in your everyday lives. This is a bizarre and a weird concept that we're so used to we believe that that's how it has to always be. Up until the Revolutionary War was over, and before the Revolutionary War, they had what you call the watch. They didn't have police. You know, it was people in the community. They had a night watch for, you know, if some kind of mess is going on. After, eventually, they had to put in a night watch at a certain point. But the first police departments, they didn't come until you started getting the cities. New York, I believe, was 1838, and some were some other places. But you don't always have to have a police department. You have to have policing. In other words, the cleaning up of your community. You've got to have people that take care of the problems that arise in your community, but you don't have to have a police department. A police department, now, a police department that is preventive. See, before, the community was reactive. This is the way that you were reactive to stuff that occurred, but this idea of an organized police department, a bureaucracy that's paid for by the government, that's paid for by your taxes, this was an economic and a political decision at a particular time. It's not something that always existed. Some people, they'll say, yeah, it happened with the cities, because in the cities, then you started getting drugs and prostitution and pickpockets and blah, blah. That's nonsense. What happened is that the mercantile class and the upper class, the elite, the thing they can't tolerate is not breaking the laws. They can tolerate breaking the laws. They can't take disorder. They can't take disruption in the order of things. A disorder in the way that they have organized things to oppress the people. So that when workers do the things that workers will do, when they're working 14-hour days, 7 days a week, all right, and living in tenements and that sort of thing, that's when they get upset. They don't want any disorder. And if that disorder is a strike, if that disorder is the organization of labor unions and people demanding their rights, that's why they need police. They need police to keep the order. The fundamental purpose of the police department is to oppress you. Not only was order one of their foci, or one of the things they focused on, they also focused on particular groups. They focused on black people. They focused on immigrants. They focused on the poor. And that thing still resides today. If they say to you, this week we're going to focus on drugs and guns, you know not to go down to Wall Street.
That's right.
You know not to go into the lockers in your precinct where you're going to find more illegal guns and drugs than anywhere else. You know to go to the black community. Without police, you say, well, how would we make it without police all in and among us? You're just so used to it. I cannot go to the block association meetings on my block. Because to me, they are police crazy. If you say anything that's wrong, there's some dummy will say, you know, the police got a program, they're coming to your house, and they will look in all your doors and windows and make sure it's safe and make sure nobody steals anything. All right? You say, why don't we have a block party? Well, the police got a program, they'll make a block party for you. You know? And when I go there, I literally can't take it. I start losing my mind when they're just police crazy. And when they see them, the same people that's beating up their kids and doing all these things, they're acting like they're their friends. You don't have to have police in and among you. In fact, it's what they would call an undemocratic concept. It was something that, as I said before, they couldn't even have imagined years ago. But now the police are involved in everything you do. Let's say that there's a child, and you hear that, you look and maybe their shoes are run over and they might be a little raggedy, or maybe you're hearing sounds and screams coming from the house of, a mother that's beating her kids or whatever it is. In the old days, some neighbors would go and they go, what's the matter? And then after she tell them, look, I'm working 2 jobs and these kids are acting all up and my man left or whatever, they said, well, okay, well, tell you what, we'll babysit, maybe you can send them over to or maybe I'll send my daughter over to babysit, and the community will work that problem out. Now, they encourage you to call an anonymous number, and then ACS is going to send a social worker to your house. And if you don't want to let them in, then they go get a cop. And if you don't want to let them in, I don't have to say any more to you. When they come to your door, they come like they're entitled to come into your house. You remember last week, Martin Delaney? He said, if they come to my door and I don't lay them a dead corpse at my threshold, then may the grave refuse me and arrest in place, and heaven my spirit a home. This was a concept that your home is your that concept is gone in 2015. And certainly it's a concept, Ramarley Graham is your example, that shows you it's no longer the truth. Eleanor Bumpers, a simple rent dispute, a simple case that maybe she was behind in her rent, and it ends up with them shooting her 2 times with a shotgun. Try to lie and say she came at them with a knife. But Dr. Harold Osborne proved that she couldn't have had a knife because the first shot blew her hand off. Why are the police at the home of a 67-year-old woman about a rent dispute? That's the fundamental question. It's not about how many shots will fight. They're not even supposed to be there. This idea that the police are going to be in and among your community is simply not a valid and a true statement. They don't have to be. I'm glad he made a reference to the origin. Wow, 5 minutes. I thought I just had started. Okay. All right, I'm going to have to save a lot of stuff for rebuttal. Patrolman. You know where that comes from? Brother Leiter alluded to it. The slave patrols. That's where the policing started in the South. It started with, you'd have this patrol and their jobs were to terrorize, their jobs were to frighten the other slaves and enslaved Africans not to try to escape, and to inflict punishments. See, the police now feel they're supposed to inflict punishment. They inflict capital punishment for any crime they decide upon here in New York. Oh, the idea that the police are to fight crime is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard of. The police, their job is to organize the crime.
That's right.
Now, you probably think I'm being rhetorical. But what I'm saying to you is that is what their job is. Their job is to organize. Or they started by organizing pickpockets and little thieves, so on and so forth. And in exchange for immunity, they would, the people would give them information. They have a whole network of snitches in our community. People that they can go to at any time that will tell them what's going on. And they're very interested and very opposed to any self-help efforts to stop the crime in the community. Do you remember when Siraj Wahaj and those brothers got together and started, and also the Black Men Against Crack, going to the crack houses? They didn't go and help them. They didn't go and arrest the crack dealers. They try to arrest them for carrying the things you need to carry in if you're going to go in and bust a crack house. This really happened. These are things that happened. We had to go and get those brothers out of jail because they were fighting the crack epidemic. The other issue with the formation of the organized police departments was not only did the mercantile class did they want to maintain the order, not only did they want strikes broken and make sure that there's no disorder, they wanted you to pay for it. See, they didn't want to do it through private guards to guard their stuff. They organized municipal police departments so that you could pay for it. Now, they've always been involved with the organization of crime, but prohibition created a boom. You think the police stopped drinking when prohibition came? You believe that? No, the police didn't stop drinking when prohibition came. The police made a boom. There was thousands of speakeasies in New York alone. Thousands, not 100, not 10, thousands of speakeasies. In other words, speakeasy was a place where they sold illegal booze. You have to have the cooperation of the police department for that to go on. The same way you have to have the cooperation of the police for drugs to be sold in our community. Right. You don't have to be in a community a half hour before you can see where the drugs are being sold. What, the police don't have eyes? No. The police, their job is to maintain order. It is not to prevent crime. Black youth, don't join the police department. Before you decide to join any organization, the first thing you have to know, is it involved in positive or negative activity? Is it engaged in doing something positive? Is it engaged in doing something negative? To join the police and change what they're doing does not make sense. You don't join a drug gang because you want to stop the brutality and corruption and stuff that's going on in your community. You don't join a drug gang for that. You don't join the police to stop the brutality and corruption. You engage, as the brother said, Afrocentric. You got to engage in organizing in your own community. Nothing that has been done to stop the police from helping crime has stopped. Okay, I got 1 minute left. I'm going to have to end right now. I mean, almost right now. I'm going to end for a second. When I said that the police organize the crime, I mean specifically that sometimes they serve as watchmen for the mob, for one family versus another, and sometimes they actually serve as hitmen and executioners for one side or the other. I know that you all heard of the great mobster Arnold Rothstein. How many of you all ever heard? You know how he died? He was shot by Lieutenant Charles Becker of the New York Police Department. Okay, I know you all heard of the famous mobster Gas Pipe Casso. You know, if you watch any of these shows, okay? Well, if you heard of him, then you should have heard of detectives Louis Eppolito and Caracappa. They were called mafia cops. They're not exceptions to the rule. This thing exists all over. They actually carried one man, James Hydell. They arrested him, quote, in other words, kidnapped him, took him to Casso to be tortured so that he could find out who was after him. And rather than exceptions to the rule, they are the rule. You've had commission after commission that proved this. You had the Lennox Committee, formed in 1894 to investigate police corruption related to gambling, prostitution, and police extortion. You had the Mullen Commission. You had the Curran Committee. You even had Amnesty International that in the mid-90s showed that 89% of the people who died in police custody were black people. Now my time is up, but I'm going to say this. I want to answer one other thing he said, in which Brother Leiter implied that whites are satisfied with the policing in their area. 89% of the people were black, 11% were not. So more and more, even white people are coming to see that their children shouldn't be joining the NYPD, and for our children, certainly we shouldn't join it. Thank you very much. We don't have to.
We're excited.
But I learned a lot from what he was saying, and I thought about the whole Jewish piece on how Jews have their own police force. Like when you go into Williamsburg and you see Jewish cop cars and you see night watching and you see all of that.
We can't gang up on.
I'm cool with you though.
We're debating. You're making good points. You're making
I'm
good
cool.
points, but it's not fair.
I know. And then plus I also have to.
on my side.
I know. But I have to side with him today too because Dr. Mc Intosh's birthday is coming up. So if everybody can just sing happy birthday before we go on, everybody can just, come on, Dr.
Okay.
Mc.
Wait a minute. And where's Joanne? Joanne Whitehead. It's her birthday today. So, Miss Whitehead, would you be so kind so that we can regale you with our Stevie Wonder happy birthday?
Just let me sit. I'm gonna listen.
Okay. Come on, Joanne. Joanne is a former teacher and an activist in her community, and her husband whispered to me and told me that today is her birthday. So those of you who know a little bit about her, we are going to sing this birthday. This will never happen to you again, okay? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, Sister Joanne.
Okay, well, I didn't anticipate this, so we will have a discussion. No, it's, I guess what I do have to say is that, I'm so thankful that I'm healthy.
Amen.
And that, there's so many people who, complain about getting a little bit older, but every year is an absolute blessing. So I'm gonna go along with Betty, who says it's just a number here.
That's right.
So,
All right.
okay, and thank you so much.
It's your turn.
It's not my birthday, everybody, but thank you very much.
It's coming up.
It's in a couple of days, April 21st, and like Sister Joanne said, every additional day is a blessing.
And mine's the 27th. Mine's the 27th.
Okay, we got another birthday guy up here. And yours is on the 27th?
27th.
Okay, well, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Now, Brother D, step forth. Aren't we fortunate to have a brother who
Resident
is
artist.
such an incredible, come on over, you scared of us? Such an incredible poet. I told him that he was a master poet. And at first he didn't agree with me, but after impressing upon him that he really is, then he did agree with me.
You're just hard to disagree with.
Oh, okay. Brothers and sisters, you're going to enjoy the poetry, Brother D.
Thank you. Before folks leave, I'd like to give folks a flyer for the discussions that we have on Monday nights at Tom Mary Temple. And the next 2 sessions, I got 2 flyers for those sessions. It's dealing with temptation versus discipline. Our tendency to do the stuff we know we ain't supposed to do, but we do it anyway in cooperating with our own destruction. So please get these flyers. Now, I often like to find a poem that would have something to do with the topic, and I don't have a poem directly dealing with the recruitment of black youth into the police department. However, the way that, the train of thought, like you be thinking of one thing that causes you to think of something else, well, I started thinking in terms of the U.S. government's designation of itself as an international police force and the degree to which black people have been involved in that, and it caused me to think in terms of 32 years ago, approximately 32 years ago, of a U.S. police action in Grenada that involved a lot of young black men that I'm told made up the 82nd Airborne, and a fairly young black general who came to some of our attention in terms of playing a coordinating role in that process, talking about Colin Powell. Putting the finishing touches on a revolution in Grenada that many of us in the movement celebrated highly. And the following year, as we were reflecting on that, I wrote this piece called Grenada Up Against the Beast. U.S. troops drop from the sky, and more of our people are bound to die. Thinking people raise an outcry, and U.S. leaders try to justify. To let the media take your feelings on a ride. Just remember all the times they lied. When they move, they want the common people on their side. Control, psychology applied. They rehearse before a scheme is tried. But the Western rulers can't really hide. We know they plan our genocide. We know they plan our genocide. This Euro-Western madness is on the loose to subject the planet to severe abuse. And they will use any excuse in stealing what others produce. A disease spread by power misuse. With this, righteousness cannot have a truth. An evil world disorder we're up against. A devil thrives on one's weakness, hence internal strength is our main defense. I said internal strength is our main defense. A few get rich at our expense, and they keep wanting more, and it don't make sense. An evil world disorder we're up against. A devil thrives on one's weakness, hence internal strength is our main defense. I said internal strength is our main defense. A devil doing evil should be no surprise. Don't forget about Grenada. Learn to analyze and see things with our minds and not just with our eyes. What factors cause the young revolution's demise? Maybe emotion, common thought, or maybe spies. Maybe personality or foreign ties. A difference maybe someone didn't realize between principle and programmatic compromise. Popularity or know-how that some despise. Honest wrong conclusions and an outright lie. We must evaluate the lows for future highs. Evaluate the lows for future highs. An evil world disorder we're up against. A devil thrives in one's weakness, hence internal strength is our main defense. Internal strength is our main defense. A few get rich at our expense, and they keep wanting more, and it don't make sense. An evil world disorder we're up against. A devil thrives on one's weakness, hence internal strength is our main defense. Internal strength is our main defense. Underdeveloped countries on a righteous course gonna be confronted by the satanic force. But you can rant and rage that the oppressor is wrong. But the important lesson is the need to build our thing strong.
Let's have another warm round of applause for Brother D. Now, brothers and sisters, each time that you gather, you know that we ask you to give a donation. We ask you to be generous. And it's necessary because of the expense that we incur that you might have. Is there anyone that we missed? If so, raise it in the back. Here was a couple in the back. Rockaway Boulevard, Queens. We're going to have the mother of Eric Garner, who was murdered by the police, was murdered by a white group of crazy cops. His mother will be at CMOTAP Center, along with a strong brother who is now retired and such an activist in the community, Brother Michael Graves. He's going to be with us. And we're also going to have Milton Almaty, who is the publisher of Black Star News. So he's going to be there giving statistics and information about what is going on nationwide with these police incidents. And Michael will come to us in his own way because he has been with 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement who care for many years. And Brother Leiter told some things that Blacks Cop, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement were doing. I really didn't know. I knew that they were very busy in the community, but some of the things that he said I really did not know. So, Having said that, how do you feel? How's things going so far? I like the strong positions that they took, you know?
Yes.
I'm talking because I'm trying to let it cool off a little bit in here. Okay? So they're coming back for their summations.
Brother Leiter keeps going like this in his jacket. It's making
Wallace a little like this.
Oh, okay, thanks.
As long as he's going, he start hitching up his pants. Then we'll let it go. It's good to have this kind of a conversation. It's good to have information from people who have researched and bring us information that is factual, that will enable us to make informed decision. Thank you for your generosity. And now we're going to bring back before us the tall brother who's going to slay. Oh, never mind. We don't do that. But he's coming back ready. Put your hands together.
Before I begin, I'd like to just thank Betty Dodson and Dr. Mc Intosh for the invitation. This is definitely a good work where our community can have a diverse opinion on a host of matters in order to make a more informed decision or have more informed decision. And it's with great pain that I have to refute or rebut made by our good brother. First of all, starting off with a small position in terms of pleading an oath to a white guard. Let's get that straight. When you take an oath and they say, "So help you God," if they talking about a white guard, I'm definitely not talking about no white guard. Because I know who God is. And he's definitely not white. And he's definitely not a white guard representing white. So that was his first mistake. Yes, I did take an oath. But when they said, "So help you God," I know who God is, and I meant one thing. They may have meant something else, but that's on them. The second flaw in this argument was that we take an oath to hassle members of our community or the rest of the 11-year-old or to racial profile. That, although that does occur within law enforcement, that is not the oath that we take. I think that if they did include those in our oath, many of us black law enforcement officers would object immediately, because I do not take an oath to swear to the rest 11-year-olds or the target members of the African American community or the racial profile. So that's the second flaw in his argument. Yes, it does happen, but that's not the oath that we take. We had taken oath to uphold the law, which many African Americans in the legislature, be it the state senate, be it the assembly, state assembly, create in terms of some of these laws. Now, some of the laws are definitely outdated, need to be changed, but for the most part what we have as it relates to law enforcement is an abuse of authority. Them being outside of the law. So these laws, there will never be a law to state that law enforcement officers can racially profile African Americans, because that's been our contention from day one. It is against the law to racially profile. But there's a difference between the law and the policy. The policy is set by the police commissioner. He can allow officers or excuse officers who do go outside of the law. But that's why we feel it's very important for black youth to join the police department, so that we can be these police commissioners and we can dictate policy. So there's a difference between law and policy. Yes, the practice may in some of these police departments be to arrest 11-year-olds or to racially profile or to hassle members of the African American community. But that's not the law. That's not in the patrol guide. It will never state that in the patrol guide, my good brother. And I would never swear to a white guard to oppress our people. Point number 2. My greatest opposition to his position is it's very strong, very poignant, very significant in theory, but in practicality, very weak. We're going to have police officers. Not because I want to, not because some of you may want to. That's reality. That's being practical.
Right.
In the society that we have today, can you imagine if we didn't have police officers? Now, I'm not talking racist, abusive, disrespectful, murderous police officers. As an institution, if we didn't have law enforcement entity, can you imagine what the streets was like? Then you hear the news, 9 people shot over the weekend. Where's the volunteers that are going to go there and track them guys down? So yes, theoretically, beautiful if we were able to control our community, patrol our community, arrest individuals who violate our laws, who oppress us, who kill us, who murder us, who rob us, who break into our house. It'd be beautiful, theoretically, if we can do that. We had the power to do that. We don't have to agree. Who makes the arrests? Who's the judges? Who prosecute? Is that really going to happen? Well, not even if it's going to happen. Let's say it does happen. Is it today, tomorrow? Is that what's happening tomorrow, today? No. So our young black youth should join the police department because that's being practical. That's reality. That's not theory. So, our good brother, and I understand I was, he did an excellent job for preparing for his position. I understand who I was initially supposed to debate. Another flaw of his, very short, no, not even very short, very low on solutions. What's the alternative? At the end of the day, all right, don't join the police department. We don't need a police department. Perhaps we don't have it. What's the alternative? If our young people do not join the police department, to have white or all white police department? What's the alternative to policing? He gave a great historical foundation on how police officers started, how police department, how police agencies started. I read that too. 100% correct. But what's the alternative? That's where his argument was very short on. There's no alternative. Who's going to patrol us? Who's going to protect us? Who's going to guard us? Who's going to lock up individuals who violate laws, who violate our community? We do have a problem with criminality and crime and criminals. We do. That's reality. 5 minutes? Okay. The solution is we're going to have a police department all across the country. That's reality. Is a call for an all-white police department? That cannot be the reality. I propose that we do encourage conscious Afrocentric African Americans to take over these agencies, to join these agencies, to dictate the direction of these police agencies, because our very survival depends on it. Presently, the New York City Police Department, the last class is only 10% black. In a city that's over almost 30% African American, 27, 28%. That's preposterous. We need to be in these agencies. We need to be a part of these agencies that have so much power over the lives and the activity that goes on in our community. Not only to arrest criminals, not only to enforce the law, but to make certain our people are being respected and protected by these powerful agencies.
Amen.
Because police officers have such awesome power. They need to be checked. These white boys need to be checked. They need to be observed. That's why we need black youth to be a part of these police agencies. Yeah, some of them even need to be arrested.
That's right.
And let me tell you something. I can't remember the case right now. Ramali Graham. We went to his attorney. We went to his attorney and said we would arrest that white boy. We would assist his grandmother in arresting that white boy.
That's right.
Because she observed him kicking her door when the Bronx district attorney was procrastinating. We said we can't arrest him because we didn't observe it. And as a civilian, if you want to make an arrest for a crime, you have to observe. We told his attorney we will go with the grandmother, go to that white boy's house in Long Island and lock him. She'll lock him up. We'll make sure that he doesn't fight back or that he doesn't resist.
That's right.
And the attorney thought that was a little bit too aggressive.
Right.
Really?
This is what we did as black men. I hope you got it on film. Because everything we say that we do, everything we talk about, we say on our program on film. You know, it's not like this between us. This is what you can only do if you have black officers who are Afrocentric and conscious and believes in justice and believe in law and order. This is what you do.
Yeah.
What other flaw? Of course, there's positive and negative. Unfortunately, there's a dichotomy to police officer. The officer who stuck a stick of Edward Luima's rectum, you better believe he wasn't doing that his whole career. There's some good things he did.
When?
You know, I'm talking about during his time as a police officer. So there's a dichotomy. Police officers do good and bad.
What was his
Some
name
police
again?
officers.
What was his name again?
Hold on a second, brother. It'll be a Q&A time. So I understand these white boys. I see some good white police officers do some good things, but they were racist and white supremacists. I didn't trust them. I didn't like them. Because as they would go in that house that was on fire and carrying a little black child and get pat on the back, when it was dark and some little black kids in the dark alley, they would abuse them, disrespect them. So there's a dichotomy in police. So he's right on that. I understand the dichotomy of policing, of police officers, but the reality is, and I'm strong on practicality, not theory. I'm strong on, what's really happening, what's really going to happen, and I understand a better world, a better way, a better system. Until that's created, we have to deal with what we have. We have law enforcement institutions. They're not going anywhere, regardless of what you, I, or anyone in this room think. We're going to have police officers. So we ought to be a part of these police officers and be part of these agencies, and you can and we can make an impact, have a great effect on these institutions if we control them, if we join them, we take them over. And that's what we should do. So yes, I enthusiastically encourage black youth, not just any black youth who are conscious, who have a commitment to their people to join the New York City Police Department, to make a change, to make a difference. To protect our people, to protect our grandmothers, to protect our daughters. Not only against crime and criminality, externally, but within the New York City Police Department as well. You got to be there to have an impact. You got to be a part of it to make a difference, to make a change. And even if we don't control it or dominate, trust you me, when Noel Leiter was on the scene at the 28th precinct, them white boys knew it.
That's right.
Because when I roll up on the scene, I seen it, and this was as a police officer, not even as a supervisor. As a police officer, when I roll up on the scene, I see them talk to each other, everybody's head would turn, and they would chill. Because they know I didn't tolerate that.
That's right.
We need to be a part of these agencies. He gave an excellent presentation, made some excellent points, very excellent theoretical presentation, and some of the things that we wish would occur in terms of our community. 1 minute being in control of law enforcement. We patrol our own street. That's great, theoretically. But practically, it's not going to happen. Today or tomorrow. And that's what I'm talking about. What are we going to do today and tomorrow? And we should strongly encourage our young people to join these police forces and take them over, but do it principally. Do it respectfully. Do it the way the law says, and do not take an oath to a white guard to disrespect our
It was he made some very interesting points, and yes, now we're gonna have Dr. Beck.
Let's go, Dr.
I see that comment about the white guard really got to him. It's just like the saying, if you throw a brick into a pack, only one of them hollers, and that's the one that got hit. The same thing is true about ideas. See, if you throw a brick into a person's ideas, the one that took the most, you'll hear them holler about. Now, what he said was that everything I said was not practical. That's one of the arguments. Another one of the arguments is that he's saying, we're going to have police in our communities. That's the other position that he took. And the fact of the matter is that it really is about, he asked a question, he said, can you imagine? That's the whole thing right there. What can you imagine? If we have Afrocentric youth, as he's calling for, I don't want you to join the police department. I want you to join the movement to reclaim and defend your community. If you don't believe the police, these corrupt police departments can be opposed, all you have to do is see some of the results of the Black Lives Matter movement and earlier movements, when people weren't saying that they had to go to the police department to solve crimes. They were solving crimes within their own community. There are many community community patrols and control groups that the thing that stopped them was the police department. I mentioned to you the Black Men Against Crack. I mentioned to you the Muslims over on Bedford Avenue, Siraj Wahaj and these guys going into the crack houses. There have been many, many community patrols, and what happens is that the police department will come and interfere with these groups. And at this particular point, these groups have not been prepared to resist that interference. But if you have the imagination, people all over the world have resisted this type of military oppression. This is not a warning. This is not a threat. This is simply a statement of fact. If you want to know, is America going to have a revolution? America's going to have a revolution so big people will write about it for centuries. They'll write about it for centuries. And every one of these practical things that are taking place is going to do it. Eleanor Bumpurs, practical. That's something practical. We must stop the murder of Eleanor Bumpurs. Smallwood, we must stop the murder of sisters like Yvonne Smallwood. We must stop the torture of people like Abner Louima. We've got to stop the murders of the Michael Browns, the Brother Hawkins, the Brother Scott, because black lives do matter, and it is a matter of imagination. I told you that you don't have to have police all in and about your community. Think of your building. If you're in a building, you don't need police walking up and down your building most of the time, right? Because you and your neighbors, you'll have that building under control. You have your house under control. You know who comes in, who goes out, you know what's happening in it. You'll just expand that and you'll see what a community can be like. What did they do before they had these organized police departments? These organized police departments, as I told you before, did not exist during every stage of America's history and still don't exist in small towns. It's a lack of imagination that makes you think the only thing that our black youth can do is join with the very people who are killing them. That's not the way to stop them from killing you. No more than joining a drug gang is the way to stop drugs in your community. It's not impractical. To fight these people is not impractical. To fight these people is going to be the only thing that you can do. Because it's not, see, I hate using the word corruption. It is a corrupt enterprise, or through and through. It's not like a little bit of corruption that's in it. Its purpose is to do the things that it does. Its purpose is to terrorize you and keep you in control. It's not an aberration. It's not an anomaly. It's not, okay. Now, this thing about you have to see what happened, all you got to do is look at the film of Eric Garner being murdered. And if 100 blacks wants to arrest somebody, go and arrest that cop. Go and arrest them because you saw it on TV. You see, you saw it on a videotape. If you want to arrest somebody, arrest the people that you see on all of these videotapes. There's videotapes every day. Videotape of a young man sitting after he got off a bus, and they challenged him about having a receipt on these new buses. When those came out, I predicted that that was just another way to engage black youth, and then got to see it. They take him, he tells the officer, take your hand off of me. And for saying that, they take him, they beat him down to the ground, and you can just hear him screaming as they beat him. There are plenty, if being a black cop, see, you want to challenge the activists to be practical for a solution. But tell me what practical solutions black cops have done for this same problem. Black cops haven't done anything about Eleanor Bumpurs. No. Black cops have not done anything about Yvonne Smallwood. Black cops have not done anything about Abner Louima. Black cops have not done anything about Yusef Hawkins or any of the victims that we have. The names of the police officers who did it, they're known. If you employ the same kind of practical solutions that white cops will employ against you, if you actually try to change the department, you see, that's where the practicality is needed. I would believe we need Afrocentric people to go into the police force if I saw some names disappear off the count for some of these things that have happened to us. the name Stephen Sullivan. I mean, hey, you know who it is that killed Eleanor Bumpurs. It's not like you don't know. When Robert Torsney walked over to that boy, what's his name, Randolph Evans, sitting on his stoop, and shot him at point blank range. And then when they arrested him, they take him, and some cops say he had, some doctors say he had a transient psychomotor epileptic seizure. Well, to see some black cops against police brutality started to have some transient epileptic seizures with some of these cops that have done this stuff or that are doing these things, that will be a practical solution. Activists activists have taken practical solutions. You know, it's not through lack of a desire. It's something that will happen in time. The argument that we're going to have police is just like saying, where are we going to work if we don't have a plantation? Where are we going to, what better policing is there than how are we going to keep ourselves in order? You know? Listen, this is the debate. And so I have to present, and since the brother's going to throw a few little things over at me, I got to throw a few little things. But I do respect these brothers, and I'll tell you, I do know that they did provide valuable help for Brother White, and most of it has been defensive. But that is not enough for me to ask black youth to go into the racist, corrupt, white supremacist enterprise called the New York Police Department. Because you're not going to change the police department. The police department will change you. Thank you very much.
Questions? And
Point of order. He was reaching over there, and Mike was over here. Mike was punching his hand like this. I don't know what this means.
Get from in the middle, y'all. Don't be in the middle. Be in the middle, brother.
I think I can tell you what it means. Once they step outside, they'll let you know what it means.
You see, I got my
I see
sneakers
both
on, right?
sides of the pocket, so listen, I'm with them. I'm sorry.
They got on.
They got guns in their pocket. They carry guns.
And yeah, they decided to play good cop, bad cop. Noel's all dressed up in a tie, looking like a minister, and Michael's sitting there looking like a gangster. So they love each other. Line up right over here if you have questions, and I know you do.
Yes.
Okay, let's get out of the way. First question.
Okay, so.
Step out, man.
Up there, so it's going to be on camera.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay. So, I was listening to everyone, so I'm using my imagination and I'm thinking about just how things might work out, if they could work out. And the first thing I was thinking about was the fact that no matter what profession you're in, on the way we function now, when you go into those professions, you have to have your own mindset because the world that we live in is not setting up things for our benefit. So be it a policeman, be it a doctor, be it a teacher, whatever, you have to go in and quite often, in my opinion, have an idea of what's best for your community or it's not going to work. So in line with what the two of you were saying, if we talk about totally reframing from society in any of those professions, where does that leave us as a people if nobody's in positions to do the things that need to be done? At the same time, if we go into those positions without a clear mind set of what has to happen, where does that leave us as a community? So I actually, and I really, as you guys were talking, I kept thinking about the book, The Spook That Sat by the Door. Because if a person is not in, you don't know what button to push or not to push if it needs to be pushed, or how a system works so you know how to work around it. So on both sides, those things are really important, I think. So I had the question for both of you, I guess from both sides. One is that if a person is joining the force, which you would advocate, how do you deal with either encouraging those people who are not of the correct mindset to act right, and if if we say people should not be in the police force, then what would you say as a community we should really do to help change that paradigm shift and actually have us as a community function better and form a different way of policing?
Good question, you may have a seat. Thank you.
Okay, let's see if I have the two questions right. I got the second part. I'm sorry, just hit me.